Hi everybody, I'm Ellen and this is my husband Tim.
I'm Tim.
And if you're watching these videos, you are either a friend or family member who saw our announcement last week about our embryo adoption. Obviously we're really excited. Or maybe you're just a stranger who stumbled on our YouTube videos, maybe looking for your own journey through infertility or embryo adoption specifically, or just adoption. And either way, we wanted to just give you guys some updates about our progress and our story, and then also it's weird that you're like looking at me.
No.
We wanted to give you some updates on, like I said, our process. And we also just wanted to do some general informational videos just to kind of, if you're considering embryo adoption or know someone who's infertile and you're just kind of looking for resources for them or yourself, we just kind of wanted to give you a rundown on our process, how it's working, and kind of we just want to be a resource for anybody who needs it. We're just so excited about adopting our embryos that we totally believe in this. And we just really want to be there for other people. So
yeah, and most of the people that we've talked to, when we say we're adopting and we say we're adopting embryos, they're like, I've never even heard of that. And so that's really why one of the reasons why we're making these videos, so that people can know what embryo adoption is, so they can understand that it's an option for, like Alan said, people struggling with infertility, or even if they're not and just want to adopt some embryos. There's hundreds of thousands of embryos out there just waiting for loving homes, loving parents. And so we hope that you find this interesting and informative.
All right, so it's 2017, it's July 2017, and exactly 2 years ago, we started thinking, we would like to start a family, and just kept not happening, and then the only growth that we actually had was our four-legged kid. He was our first adoption.
Yep.
His name is Gus, and but we just kept not having a baby. And so about a year ago, like exactly a year ago, we were listening to this Christian radio program called Wretched, and one of the organizations that they sponsor is called the Tomorrow Clubs. And what they do is these clubs go into Eastern European countries, and it's kind of like Bible clubs. And so they get the gospel out to these kids and just kind of give hope to these kids and in these really impoverished countries, and it's really cool. So instantly I was like, all right, we have to adopt internationally like tomorrow. And so that really, God just kind of lit a fire in me that it was time to adopt. And my brother is adopted from Russia, and so I know how that looks, and I always thought that adoption would be really cool. And I never really was like, yeah, adoption, I'm going to do that. But I always kind of was like, I'm going to end up doing this someday. So God, give me the heart to do it. And he really came through on that. And so I kind of always knew we would adopt. And I think Tim did too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ever since before we even started dating, I always thought adoption was the coolest thing ever. It was a really cool picture of the gospel for sure. And so I knew absolutely that we would do it. I never knew it would be this soon, but we are very thankful that it is, and that it is such a cool, unique way of doing it.
So I started researching international adoption.
And when she says she started researching, what she really means is that she became the world's foremost expert on international adoption. She researched the heck out of it and came up with all these different countries, and like, can you adopt from this country? Can you not adopt? What ages can you adopt? All this information. And so we really had a good idea of
what it looks like,
what international adoption looked like. And from there,
so then I talked to some people and a friend who had adopted, and it kind of became clear after doing all this research that financially, kind of emotionally, we weren't ready to adopt basically a toddler, because if you're adopting internationally, you're basically adopting probably 2, maybe 6-year-olds, older kids, and there's just a lot of stuff that goes with that. and we just weren't in a place. We're not in a place right now where we can do that, and that's fine. And so hopefully, we definitely want to do it in the future. Still, like, huge desire of both of ours that we want to do that. So I think God's going to let us do that eventually, but it just kind of wasn't, like, the timing is just not right for that.
We need a little warm up first. we had our warm up with Gus, our dog, and so we're slowly learning, and we're going to go to the next step here pretty soon.
So I think it was like October 2016, I was talking to a coworker, and she had been a foster parent, and I was like kind of telling her about, we're kind of struggling having a baby, and I thought about adoption. She said, well, have you thought about embryo adoption? I said, well, I don't know what that is. So she kind of told me what that was, and just immediately I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. Came home, told Tim, did more research.
Lots more research.
And I, looked up stuff online. We told some of our really good friends that we were thinking about doing this, and they said, well, hey, we actually know someone, or we're connected to someone who's done it. Would you like us to connect you with them? So ended up connecting with this woman who, she and her husband had gone through embryo adoption through Nightlight Christian Adoption Agency, or Adoption Services, and talked to her on the phone, and she was just really cool about it. And then she actually connected me with several other women that I talked to. So I ended up talking to 3 families over the phone and then 1 over email. And 3 of them had, successful adoptions, meaning that their embryo adoption actually turned into living, breathing human babies who are now children growing up. One of them is, I think, a senior in high school. So that's super cool. And then one lady I talked to did not have a successful adoption, where they transferred their embryos, but theirs did not end up actually being a baby that they could hold in their arms. And so we kind of got the full range, and then we just kind of thought about it and prayed about it, and did more research, and ended up having some tests done, medical tests, and which we were told that we are actually not qualified as infertile, but that with some medical, I have some medical things that they said, you probably will not conceive on your own. You probably would need medical assistance. So, which is great for other people if that's what you feel led to do, like IUI or something. But I kind of didn't really feel very good about that. And then you wanted to do it at first.
We looked into it, and it is crazy expensive.
It is stupid expensive.
So, yeah.
And the odds, what they told us is the odds are not that much more that if you did like IUI, then you would, they're not much higher than conceiving naturally. And so we were like, wow, we're going to pour all this money into this for like a few months, and then the odds are not even that much greater. So that was kind of, I think, God's way of telling us, like, all right, I want you to do embryo adoption.
Yep, pretty clear.
So it was April 25th. So during the time that we were doing all this research, I found a couple agencies in the United States who do embryo adoption. There were like 3 or 4 that I found. Talked to a couple of them, and then felt really comfortable with Nightlight Christian Adoption Services. Woohoo! And one thing that we really liked about them was that they basically gave us all the information that we were going to need before we even submitted our application. Because once you submit your application to these agencies, they're expecting you to pay for it. It's like applications were like $300 to $500 or something. And so once you apply, you're kind of committed. And so Nightlight said, all right, well, we're going to have 3, phone conversations with you that are going to cover all of the stages of adoption. And then, at that point, you can kind of decide if you have questions, or if you want to go with us, or if you don't want to go with us. And then, we'll just, and then you can, fill out your application and submit it. And so that was a huge deal for both of us.
Yeah, and it was really great. Like, Ellen, after just doing some preliminary research, had a couple questions, and she called up the people at Nightlight and asked her questions.
Like specific questions.
Like not just surface level
like,
stuff.
do you have a fertility clinic that we could go talk to? And they're like, oh yeah, we have 2 that we work with in Texas.
Yeah, and it was no hesitation, just instantly knew the answers to these questions. Yeah. And so it was really easy, easy to talk to them and easy to get the information. And they really, you could tell that they really cared. They really knew their stuff, which is really important, right? So, I mean, it was just a really great experience since the beginning. So we're just thrilled to be able to get their name out there and get this information out there.
Yeah. And not that the other agencies were bad by any means, but we just felt like we especially felt comfortable ourselves with Nightlight.
Yeah.
And so we would definitely recommend them. So April 25th, we filled our application. It was such a cool thing. And then a couple days later, we had some more paperwork, social media agreements and complaint agreements and just kind of different papers, preliminary stuff. And then May 5th, we got our home study paperwork, which was a little intimidating, but not too bad, just because they have this really awesome checklist, and they said, all right, this is what you need, and we just got started, and it was really cool, and like I just felt like it wasn't, like it was totally manageable, like you know, basic stuff like marriage certificate. They asked for things like if you have another child, like their birth certificate, our birth certificates, get a physical, get background checks. The one thing that took the longest was the Texas State Child Abuse and Neglect Registry. That took about 30 days or something. But the other stuff was super fast. FBI background checks were really fast, like 3 minutes. Like we got our fingerprints.
We don't have a record, just in case you're wondering. No record, so cool. Squeaky clean.
Except we got our Texas driver's stuff, and I had a speeding ticket from college, and Tim did not have anything, so that was lame.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that was super manageable. We had education that we had to do, and the difference. So Nightlight, one of the things that was cool about Nightlight, they had 2 different home study programs. So one was a traditional home study, which you would also do for domestic, infant, or international through them. Or you can do what's called a snowflake family evaluation, which is the embryo adoption. And it is a fraction of the amount of stuff as a traditional home study, because they had, like, a traditional home study is like 40 to 50 hours of education, and the SFE was 10.
Way better.
So huge difference. So we basically had to watch some webinars. They gave us like 9 to choose from, and we just picked, you know, some of the ones that we thought were relevant to us. There were a lot on grief and infertility, and so we didn't really feel like we needed to watch those because we really, like we said, we're not classified as infertile, so there isn't that like grief over like miscarriage and you know, grieving the loss of being able to have a genetic child. So we watched stuff like how to create like a scrapbook for your kids, and how to raise an adopted child, and just kind of things like how to be open in your adoption, and things that were really interesting to us. And then we just had to write like a page summary, and then we had to read like a packet of paperwork that was like 15 articles or something. It was like 35 pages, like not a big deal, and then write a page about what stuck out to us about that.
Yep.
So yeah, so we got that done. And then at the end of the home study, or our family evaluation, we got in touch with a social worker, and she came out to the house and just kind of looked around. The coolest thing about it was I cleaned our house. It's never been cleaner. Yeah. No, but seriously, the social worker was just super cool and super nice and just very accommodating and easy to talk to. And it wasn't like, oh, are you fit to raise children? It was, oh, okay, have you talked about this? How have you guys communicated? We had to take a couples assessment, and then she kind of went over that with us, like, okay, you guys scored really good on, you know, communication level, but, you know, maybe think about this, or, so just like, it was cool to, you know, get a couples evaluation, like how we are together. And then she looked through the house, and then we sat down and talked together, and then we broke up, and then she interviewed each of us individually and just kind of asked us, like, okay, what do you think about, like, do you foresee any issues moving forward, like becoming parents or anything? And then got back together and talked some more, and she asked us questions like, you know, how many embryos would you like to adopt, and what kind of, like, do you have a race in mind? Are there any, like, medical issues that you would not feel comfortable like having medical history for the genetic family. And if all this is sounding really weird to you, I'm gonna go back and we're actually gonna tell you what embryo adoption is.
I thought about that earlier.
Yeah. So she kind of just talked to us about that, and then she had 2 weeks. She wrote our report, took all of our information that we had done from our personal histories, which is like, tell me about your life, like where did you go to school, what were your best childhood memories, your worst childhood memories, have you undergone traumas of any kind, what are your strengths and weaknesses, just like a lot of stuff, but it was good stuff to think about. And then she wrote all that stuff up. Then she sent it to us this last week, and then we looked over it and said, I think actually we meant to say this, or, I forgot to tell you this kind of thing. And then so she will add our little edits and then send it to the home study coordinator, who then signs off. And then we're officially in matching. Yay!
Done with the home study.
So basically we're considering ourselves done with the home study because we've officially passed. It's just like kind of dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yep.
You don't dot
don't do it differently
you don't dot
than
T's.
that. Yeah.
So yeah, we're basically done with the home study, and then we're gonna leave off with matching, and then once we get into the matching officially, then we'll do another video that kind of talks about that. So now backing up, embryo adoption. So what happens is when people are infertile, they may elect to go through a process called IVF, which is called in vitro fertilization. And what that is, I'll let the science guy talk about that.
So basically, I think it's because you don't want to say the name.
I don't. I'm comfortable with that.
So basically, you can take eggs and you can take sperm, okay, and you throw them together in a little petri dish, and they end up coming together naturally because that's what they do. And so you can get up to like 20 embryos through this process where they're all just in the dish, and some of the sperm fertilize some of the eggs, and you end up with a bunch of embryos. And they can culture those a little bit in the dish and take some of those and transfer them into the mother, and then those embryos can then grow naturally in her uterus and end up with a nice healthy baby. And then the ones that are not used at that time, they can actually freeze them, so they're frozen super cold in liquid nitrogen. And the cool thing about that is
the
cool thing about that is you can thaw them later and transfer them at a later date. But some of the families that go through this process, they have a full family, and they decide that they don't want any more kids, and so they say, we have these embryos.
Some people say, they might be in their late 30s or 40s, and then they're in their 40s and they're like, oh, 1 kid is enough for us.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2 kids are enough for us. Or I've read stories about people who they go through IVF, they do 1 cycle, and then they develop a health problem, endometriosis, or maybe a car accident or something, and then they're physically unable to be pregnant again. So it's not just like, oh, we don't want these anymore. Like, there are reasons often.
But then they have all of these embryos that are still frozen, and they can actually put them up for adoption, and rather than donating them to science or even discarding them, which is really a sad result from that. So, but the really great thing is that a lot of them are up for adoption. As I said, there's hundreds of thousands of embryos across the nation that are just sitting in liquid nitrogen, waiting for that day when they get thawed and they get transferred. And so that is the basis of embryo adoption. We're giving these frozen embryos a chance at life.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what our favorite thing was, that we get to. But the thing is too about embryo adoption, it is the adopted mother gets to be pregnant. It's like you are taking these frozen embryos, thawing them, and then they transfer them to the adopted mother into her uterus. See, I said a science word.
That's nice.
And then she actually gets to be pregnant. So I would actually get to be pregnant, which is super cool because you get to experience it for one thing. You get to bond with your baby in utero, and you get to kind of control the environment. So with domestic adoption, you have to I've heard you have to fill out things like, oh, are you okay if the birth mother smokes or drinks or does drugs? And you kind of think, oh, so I'm going to have to decide if I want my child to be exposed to those things. So if you're pregnant, obviously you get to kind of control that environment. So that was really good. So that's really kind of the summary of where we are. And so next is matching, and like I said, we'll do another video when we officially get into matching. That should be this week. But we also wanted to just kind of let you know a couple of prayer requests that we have right now. If you're a believer and would like to lift us up, I think contentment as we wait. It's hard at this point. We're kind of into it where it's out of our control. And by our, I mean my control. And so that's really hard to be out of control. It's a lot of now waiting for other people to do their part. So we have complete faith in God's timing, and it'll be perfect. But it is still hard to wait because we're just so excited to be pregnant and have a baby. And then also for just the process in general to go quickly. And yeah, I think that's kind of what we're thinking. And then as we get into matching, just to prepare the perfect couples for us to be matched with, that would be awesome. And yeah, so but again, like, we really want to be a resource for somebody, so feel free to share this video or reach out to us on social media, anything, like we're phone calls, emails, whatever. So yeah, any questions you have, we would love to answer them. And we're so excited to share this journey together and with you. So we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.